So the next step that we tackle is, I'm going to tackle is the one that's the app.js. This is this one right here. This is the next one. I'll just put a 3 in front of it. So this is the one that we're going to go in is the app.js. Now, when you look at the app.js with it, here it is. It's blank right now with it. We got to import in about 3 library files in here with it. And of course, the first one we need to pull in here is your, let's do import in your quotes with it, quotes dot, look inside that. I want to bring the app, the CSS file that's going to be formatting with it. So if you click on that, do a / on it, you should be able to find your app CSS here. Let's see here. Why does it see here? App should be able to look inside its own directory, and it should see app.css. Okay, I saw something here. Makes me kind of nervous when the file doesn't show up like that with it, but it's in the same level, same folder. That's what I'm talking about. Is you don't have to go into any other directory, and that's what the dot does with it, to look inside the same directory, so you don't have to go out with it. The second one I need for you to bring in, which you haven't done yet, is the which you have. It's in under the component is your navbar.js with this thing as well. So import in the next one is what's called your navbar. Make sure you have the same spelling as navbar, meaning navbar.js with it. From open up your quote, look inside the components folder. This is the file that you have right here, the components folder right here. So components, and if you do another / you should see the JS file is this. Again, you don't have to put the file extension out of it. Just come to the right of that with it. All right. The third file that you need to import into this app.js is the one that's very important. It's called import, and I'm going to explain what this means in a second here. I can't multitask and walk and chew gum at the same time. You're going to use what's called the browser router, and as router. Okay. So browser router as router, meaning that it just channels the page of different pages that you're going to be loading into a certain area of the particular section of the component with it. Does that make sense? So the browser router as router, it routes the content of the component into a certain section of the page that you are putting into. That's what this is. So browser router as router, you're going to be routing a particular element in the tag, a certain content of that tag, into a certain section when you return it with it. So coming to the right of that, you're going to put from, in quotes, router, React router DOM. Okay, React router DOM, this one right here. Okay, so come to the right of that, put a semicolon on that one as well. So all 3 of these have semicolons colons after it. Make sure you properly put semicolons after it properly. It looks like that. So every what I call is preprocessor statements or import statements. You do this in Java. You do this in C++. Every programming language will have it. This replaced the CDN exercise that we did in number 2. Remember that? So it's pulling it from the React library file with it. Okay. The first thing I need in this particular file that we're going to do is we're going to write a function, and the name of this function is very important. The name of this function has to be the same name as the file name. So the file name is app uppercase A lowercase a uppercase A pp. So uppercase A and 2 lowercase letter pp. So it has to be the same name as that. All right. We call this a constructor, all right, because a constructor, it's not a regular function that you're writing. A constructor is something that you actually make an initiation, you write to it, and it defaults to that value with it. So let's say you open up a bank account, they give you a bonus for $50, open up a bank account. That can be, every new account will get $50 as a balance with it. So that's a constructor that initiates, that writes to it as by default. Most banks open up as what? A balance of 0, right? So 0 is the constructor with it. So it's kind of like an initial value that you would start out and you can call with it as well. So you always have an app, a function name, always starts out with the uppercase letter with it. It's very important you start with the uppercase letter. It just recognizes when I look at a file like this, navbar.js, I know there's a function called navbar. When I look at app.js, I know there's a function called uppercase app, so on and so on. Okay, does that make sense? So it's just a naming convention that you have to do. Left and right parentheses tells you it's a function. Inside the function is the scope that defines the left curly brackets and the right curly brackets. That's the container. It's boundaries with it, right? So the variables that you define is contained inside of that. Every function needs to return, and it returns a particular, oops, not that type, this one, the left parentheses and right parentheses inside of that. So I like for you to use the div. In this case, the div, we're going to use the class name, and if you recall the class name, we did a class called what? App. Remember that? So the app that you wrote on the CSS, on the app CSS, this right here, this is what it is right here. Okay, this app, this class is now this right here. Okay, so you're calling instead of class equals name in React, it's class name equals app with it. All right, and let's close that off like that, and hit enter, and you're inside that particular container with that CSS with it. We're going to use router. Okay. Tighten up the code, make sure it's indented in like I have with it. Inside of router, you're going to actually call a navbar. Now, navbar, this navbar is this navbar.js right here. And the way how you render it, to call it, you have to actually call it and put it inside of this navbar. All right, this is the navbar. This is this right here where we haven't wrote anything to it yet. So navbar space / that goes there with it. That's what you're putting in there. Everything else we will deal with at this time with it. So hold off. Make sure you pause this. I have white dots up here with it, so I need to do File, Save All right now with it. I want you to pause the screen. Look at, here is my app.js file. Make sure it looks like this. Here is my index.js. It looks like this. Okay? You have to connect the pieces in here. The app.js, all right, it's being pulled. It's pulling from the app CSS. This is the app CSS as the style for the app.js, and the app.js is being loaded in your index.js. Okay, and your index.js is telling it to render the app.js here as rendering with it, and you're telling it to actually to output it to the root section of your index.html here, which is this one right here. All right, can you connect all the pieces together for me? Make sure you understand how that works with it, okay? I'm going to stop the video. It's almost 10 minutes here.